Good afternoon. My name is Gary Adkins, and I'm the immediate past president of the Professional Numismatics Guild. And if you're aware of it, the PNG has been putting on a number of seminars throughout the country at various venues and trying to provide information and on interesting topics and with interesting people. And today we have a very interesting person who's agreed to spend some of his time here with us today. Dave Bowers started collecting in 1952 and began dealing in coins in 1954. So his career has essentially spanned 2 centuries. And he's getting close to 200 years old, but he's not quite there yet. But Dave is a very prolific writer and probably one of the foremost writers in our hobby. And I would go on record as saying that Dave has probably done more to contribute to coin collecting, other than maybe Maynard Sunman, another great guy in the former numismatist. But anyway, Dave is here today, and he's going to share some of his thoughts and wisdom from his decades of experience in this industry and as a collector. He's a collector of many different things, so he knows a lot about a lot of things. But today he's going to share his time with us, and we really appreciate it. So I'd like to welcome Dave Bowers.
Thank you, Gary. You know, he could have kept on going, and that would have been okay. Should I stand up or sit down?
Sure, wonderful.
Maybe I'll just sit down. Okay. I've never given a sit-down talk in my life, so this is the first. But it's everybody else is sitting down. Should I have a sandwich? No. All right. Well, how many here are here for the food, and how many here for the talk? Anyway, I'm Dave Bowers, and I started in 1952 collecting the way that you're supposed to start collecting, getting a Lincoln cent folder made by Whitman, and being told that a 1909 SVDB cent was worth $10. And of course, I thought I would find one that afternoon. I never did find one, but the bug bit me, and then I got an album for Liberty Head nickels and an album for Barber dimes, album for all the other coins were in circulation, Buffalo nickels. I couldn't afford half dollars or dollars. And all these things were around. Barber coins were still in circulation, but worn almost thin. 1909 VDBs were very interesting because they had a nice story. So I'd find 1909 VDBs, and they usually would be, believe it or not, an EF grade, even though a 1910 might be in fine grade. People must have saved them as souvenirs and then spent them. But finding EF, so I decided I'm going to keep all the 1909 VDB Philadelphia coins I could find. So I have like 10, 20, 30. Well, these are just getting out of hand, and so I spent them. Today, a Littleton coin would buy them. I came from a family that was not well-to-do. My father was a civil engineer. He made $12,000 a year doing structural engineering, and he made it very clear that if I really wanted to collect Liberty Head nickels and everything else, I better find some way to earn money, because you know, my name wasn't Norweb or anything. So I decided to become a dealer, and a dealer is actually in quotes what they used to call best pocket dealers. I don't know if they use that term anymore, but you had a little inventory, a little box, 2x2 envelopes, and you went to coin shows and you set up, and I said, well, here's an extra this or extra that, and that's sort of how I started. I wasn't old enough before 1938 to drive a car. So I ran ads in the local papers that I wanted to buy Indian heads, rare Indian cents and so forth, and I used to take the public bus or ride my bicycle, and I would knock on doors and say, here I am, you called me, and what do you have? People would have Colombian half dollars are very common, and I'd pay 55 cents a piece for them. And you know, they were everybody, if they had something that Colombian half dollars or 1883 Liberty nickels without cents. Those are very common in the hands of the public. In Kingston, Pennsylvania, which was next door to 44th, a druggist called me, and he said that his drugstore he had bought on Market Street in Kingston, and that had been operated by an old fellow who had passed away, but the old fellow liked 2-cent pieces, and whenever he got them in change, he saved them. So he had a little cigar box that had hundreds of 2-cent pieces in it. Would I be interested in those? So I took my little blue book of United States coins, and whatever 2-cent pieces were worth, let's say they were worth 20 cents. I said, okay, I'll buy them all. And I did that. And it was great fun. When you think about buying things cheaply, a Bring Uncirculated, after I became a dealer, a Bring Uncirculated 1999 SVDB cent, Bring Uncirculated, retailed at $20. So the prices were different. Jim Ruddy, who later became my partner in 1955, and a twice told tale, ran, when the double die cents came out, ran an ad in the local paper in Johnson City, said, I'll pay 25 cents each for them. And he had so many that he said, I'm not buying them anymore. And today those coins are $5,000 a piece. Well, as I said, I didn't have much money and didn't make money very quickly. My father loaned me $6,000 to do an inventory, to build an inventory. I said that I wanted to pay him interest, which he didn't want to charge me, but I said I was very proud of I was a little entrepreneur. Like, I used to wash dishes at summer camp, deliver newspapers, prescriptions, cut grass, shovel snow. And I sort of wanted to say this was my own deal. So I offered to pay him 3% interest, which was bank, and I did that, borrowed $6,000, and that gave me a stake. With $6,000 in 1953, that's probably like someone loaning you, in terms of coin buying money, $200,000 today. Like Morgan, silver dollars were just a little over face value. Uncirculated Indian cents were like a 19.7 or $1 piece. Barber half dollars retailed at about $6 or $7 in proof. And although those sound cheap, if you wanted to sell one, you could only sell it for $9 or whatever. But I early on learned to like to read and to learn. So I spent most of my money on buying books and things. And I went to the Wilkes-Barre Coin Club as a young dealer, and my knowledge became known, and people would say, okay, well, I have a set of the numismatists. I never read the silly things, but if you want them, I'll bring them in next time. So I'd get a set of the numismatists back to 1920. Or I have auction catalogs. Max Melf keeps sending them to me or stacks, and I don't need them. And so I'd get those. There was only one auction catalog that had any value, and that was B. Max Mell's 1941 Dunham sale, which at a coin club would sell about $3 or $4. But if you had anything else, they had no value whatsoever. It would be like it today if someone said, I have a pile of coin worlds, or numismatists from 20 years ago, I want $1 each. No one would buy them, but they take them free. I don't want to give the wrong idea. There were no plated Chapman catalogs or hand-priced Woodward sales or anything. These are just garden variety things. I bought every book I could, pattern coins, Sheldon's large cents book, Hazeltine's book on, so-called book on half dollars, and I've read them, and patterns became very interesting to me. I loved patterns, still do, and the book was by Adams and Wooden in 1913. So I've either been blessed or cursed with a very good with a good memory. So I would read the Adams and Wooden book, and I would say, okay, well, Adams and Wooden 264 is 1858 Indian cent. AEW 312 is 1859 with a reverse of 1860. And I would go to coin shows, usually hitching a ride, like Empire State Numismatic Association, and people, dealers in United States coins knew nothing about patterns whatsoever. There were a couple that did. Abe Kossoff did, and Stax would have. Stax never went to conventions, so. So I became known. First of all, people thought I was very wealthy for some reason, which I was not. But I mean, I didn't say I wasn't. But I didn't say I was. So somehow or other, I always wrote a check for something I wanted, and I would buy esoteric things, like colonials by die varieties that I used my Miller Rider book and so forth. So I was looked at as a disposal by dealers after I started going to shows, 1954, 55. Here comes Dave. Well, I have this colonial. I don't know what it is, but he'll buy it. Or I have this pattern. And so here I am, a little kid. I'm still a teenager. In 1953, my first year of dealing, Abe Kossoff who was partner with Abner Kreisberg, somehow they liked me. He was in California, and so he would send me. He'd say, I have a customer that wants a bag of silver dollars or some bags of silver dollars. I'll pay you 10% if you get bags of silver dollars. At that time, and this continued for years afterwards, you could go to a bank in Pennsylvania and say, I'd like to buy a bag of silver dollars uncirculated. You couldn't say I want a bag of 1878s or whatever, but I'd like to buy a bag of silver dollars uncirculated. So the bank would order them from the Federal Reserve System. How many do you want? You'd pay in advance. And I'd say, well, having a check for $15,000 from Abe Koss, I want 15 bags of uncirculated dollars. So they would come in, and I had paid for them in advance. Abe Kossoff would pay me 10%, so I'd make $1,500. And opening them up, they'd be 1884, 1886, or stuff that you'd find in the East, because Abe Kossoff and Abner Kreisberg lived on the West Coast, and when they went to buy dollars, they got S's or something. No one ever got CC's, by the way. They got S's and out there, and we got P's. You didn't find O's very much either. This all came later. So Abe Kossoff, I guess, told people that I was a good dealer customer of his or whatever. So in December 1953, it became generally known that the King Farouk sale was going to be held in Cairo in 1954. And here I am. Remember, I'm a kid that's, 16 years old or however old I was. Dealers are calling me up like, I'm going to Cairo. Can I represent you? Abe Kossoff did, Abner Kreisberg did. They were together at the time, so I saw it very important. Very important. I really wasn't very important, but I thought that was interesting. A guy named James P. Randall, which he disappeared later, was a dealer in pattern coins. But then Abe Kossoff Abe Kossoff and Abner Kreisberg, and some of you knew both of them, operated the numismatic gallery in Beverly Hills, and they were partners. So Abe Kossoff went to Cairo with his family, Sonny and his wife Molly, and Saul Kaplan went, but Abner stayed home, and Abe and I handled handled Abe Kossoff's numismatic estate and much of Abner Kreisberg. So all these guys are good friends of mine. But Abe went to Cairo and made certain deals with Saul Kaplan in Cincinnati, like let's be partners in this and so forth. And it did involve Abner because I guess Abner wasn't there and there were certain arrangements to be made on the spot. So Abner and Abe broke up after the Cairo. They came back and they were no longer partners. And Abner continued running the store on North Beverly Drive, which some of you still remember. It was around for a long time. Abe Kossoff went over to Encino and bought a house and dealt out of his house. But both continued to be good dealer friends. Abner Kreisberg, in particular, those of you who knew Abner was a very generous person. And how many people here knew Abner? I knew you'd. Okay, well, if you knew Abner, Abner was a gentleman. He had a lot of money. He was not a numismatist. If you said, if you said I have a large cent Sheldon 48, he would say it was nice, but he didn't pretend to be a numismatist either. He was a coin dealer and knew how to deal, and that was fine. But he belonged to the Friars Club, and he had anyway. I went out to see him once in 1958, and he said, "Have you ever seen a house worth $100,000?" Here I'm from the East. I said, "No," and he said, "Well, William Boyd, Hopalong Cassidy's house on North Beverly Drive just sold for $100,000, and can I take you to see it?" So I went to see it over there. Today you probably couldn't buy a dog house in Beverly Hills for $100,000. But so along comes in 1959 or 60, there was a gentleman named Lennox Lohr, L-O-H-R, who was in charge, I believe, of CBS or involved with CBS in the Field Museum. He was a collector of patterns. He had a huge number of patterns, thousands of patterns, and his collection had been offered around. It had been offered to Stax in New York City, who didn't want it. This is esoterica. It probably was like if I came and said, I have well, not quite. I have parking tokens of San Francisco. Do you want to buy a collection? I'll make. This is we didn't have these, and I'm turning this off. We didn't have these years ago, so this is innovation. But anyway, while Abner Kreisberg said, "I'll buy it," and he bought the collection, wrote Lennox Laura a check. So he told me, said, "Dave, you like patterns, you know, and you used to buy them from Abe Kossoff when I was involved with Abe Kossoff. I want you to have this collection, and it's $100,000." And I said, "Well, I don't have $100,000." And he said, well, that's okay." He said, "Come out and look at it." So I went out to Beverly Hills. This is 1959. And there it was. I remember one instance, Adams had Wooden said there were only, this particular nickel was unique, but the Laura collection had 4 of them. So he said, "It's $100,000. He said, "But you don't have to pay me anything." He said, "You can pay a third a year from now, a third another year from now, and a third 3 years from now." And I said, well, that's awfully kind of you. We can do it that way. What interest? I wouldn't think of charging you interest. I'm not kidding, okay? So anyway, make a long story short, we took the collection back, issued price lists, and I wrote letters, and Dr. J. Hewitt Judd's book on patterns hadn't quite come out yet, but there was a little bit of interest in patterns. And so about I don't know, a month later, we sent Abner a check for, say, $50,000, and then 6 months later, the rest. And I just would never forget that kindness to a little kid. People were always very kind to me when I started. Not everybody. There's a guy named Lou Werner, who was a sergeant at arms of ANA, and I bought from him, I've told this story before, I bought from him 2 proof half-cents of the 1840s. They were beautiful proofs, because Lester Merkin, who was a clarinetist, musician, was also a customer of mine. And he said, "Well, I'm putting together some proofs. Can you buy some for me?" He was not a dealer at the time. And I said, "Okay." So I bought from Lou Werner these proofs for $200 each. And I sent them to Lester by mail. And I said, "Beautiful proofs I bought for $200 each. I'd like $240 or something." And he writes back and he says, "Well, you know, these are electrotypes. If you look very carefully right around the rim, you'll see a little seam, you know." And he said, and I didn't know what an electrotype was, okay? And so I was dismayed, because here's a dealer at the ANA convention or someplace, you know, of great repute, you know, selling me fakes. So I went to Mr. Warner at another show, and I said, "You know, these are fakes. Look at the edge." And he said, "You know, you call yourself a coin dealer. That's your problem." And I said, "Well, they're not genuine." And he said, "Well, did I say they were genuine?" And I said, "Well, I said, well, I guess maybe you didn't, but I assumed they're genuine." He said, "Well, you better learn better next time." I never forgot that, okay? But this is sort of like if you read the biography of Thomas Edison, when Thomas Edison didn't know how to swim, his uncle threw them in the canal and he learned. So I sort of learned the hard way. I once bought a 1912 S nickel and got it home, a mail order from somebody in the numismatics scrapbook magazine, and the S fell off. And I wrote back to this guy, and he said, "Well, that's not the same coin I sold you." You know, so you learn to live by your wits, and which I learned, which is very good. I wouldn't have it any other way. My first ANA convention was 1955. And I wasn't old enough to be a member of the ANA, because you had to be 18. They did not like young numismatists. But so Lou Reagan, who was the ANA, he was the general secretary. They didn't have a headquarters. He carried the ANA records in his briefcase. And it was Lou Reagan, L-E-W-A-S, who assigned Boers tables, who accepted new dues and everything. He did everything except he did not run the numismatist. The numismatist was done separately, but I wrote to him and I said, "Could I have a Boers table in Omaha?" And he said, "Well, but I'm not old enough to be a member." And he said, "Well, if you have your father guarantee your transactions and you give a good letter of recommendation, we'll let you have one." So Lee Hewitt ran the numismatics scrapbook magazine, the leading publication at the time. He wrote a letter saying, "Dave has been an advertiser since 1954, all of 1 year, and we've never had a complaint concerning him, and some people like to do business with him." Anyway, so I had my little Boers table at the ANA when I couldn't even be a member, and had a very, very nice time. Among the things I had a rare 1849 half-dime. And it was like in VG grade. I remember it was like $12 or something. And I left my case open, the exact same kind of cases as they have today, and talked to somebody, and then I came back, and the half-dime was gone. And the guy next to me, who was actually worked for the railroad. You didn't have to be a professional dealer to have a porch table. He worked for the railroad, and I remember he had liked to eat things like sunny side up eggs, and he had eggs on his tie. You remember all these weird things. But anyway, he said, you know, the guy that took it, that was the guy, he took it, and I saw him, he was over there. So they had a security guard, and I said, you know, I hear this man say, he said, well, this man is a well-known coin thief, but, you know, we don't have any way to charge him or anything. We just keep an eye on him, you know. Well, I said, what can I do? Well, there's really not much you can do because, you know, we can't search him. So I just remember this. And you're in the course of doing things, you remember things, remember obscure things. You know, maybe you forget the important things, remember the unimportant. The PNG, by 1995 or 1955, the PNG had been going on for about 2 years in correspondence by Abe Kossoff and Saul Kaplan, but it hadn't been formed yet. So in 1955, my first show, they had their first PNG meeting. And Abe, remember, by this time I was a good customer of Abe Kossoff's. I had bought patterns from him, and when we came back from the fruit collection, I bought a lot of patterns from him and Saul, so I was a good friend of Abe's. So Abe comes and pats me on the shoulder and says, you know, the PNG, you know, you're not old enough to belong to the ANA, and of course you're not old enough to be the PNG, but sometime it will be my pleasure to sponsor you for PNG membership. So anyway, that did happen. I don't quite know when. I probably had to be 21, maybe 1959 that happened or something. But the PNG in the early days, it was very much of a private club, and I first started going to the meetings probably in 59 or 60. Jim Ruddy was a member in 59. They gave him an award the other day. They didn't have any paid positions, so they asked Jim Ruddy, our company, Empire Coin Company at that time, was fairly well known as having a good business model. We put out a little magazine, we kept proper accounting records, we guaranteed the authenticity of our coins, and we were fairly energetic and so forth. So somewhere or other they went and said, we need a general secretary. Jim Ruddy, will you be the general secretary of PNG? What would now be the executive director, I guess. And he said yes. So for 1960 to 1964, Jim, our office was the PNG. You know, when he had collected dues, settled did arbitrations and so forth. And of course, he got no compliments for this. Someone would say, well, you know, the PNG gave me a raw deal on this, or this member cheated me, and you know, and no one ever said to Jim, thank you for being secretary of the PNG and answering all this correspondence. But he did it anyway, and occasionally someone would say thank you. Now today, Bob Rubin gets paid a few dollars for doing the same thing. Of course, PNG is much larger. PNG was a private club. They would say, if we like you, Saul Kaplan and Abe ran the PNG like maybe somebody runs a Russian or former Russian country. You know, this is the rule. And so if I wanted to be a PNG member, which they wanted to be, they probably went and said, Dave wants to be a PNG member. And is that okay? Yes, you're a PNG member. There was no voting or anything. And when you went to Stax would not join because Stax did not like Abe Kossoff because they were once big head-to-head competitors in New York City. So it was many years before Stax would join because they didn't want to do anything that Abe Kossoff was involved with. And these are little side things. Anyway, PNG went on. I went out with their meetings. We once had a president named Earl Parker, if any of you knew him. He was a dealer in San Francisco, and one thing he liked was drinking, okay? So he would get a PNG meeting, and I think he was president, and he would just go on and on and on, and finally say, Earl, sit down, you know. But we all had a good time. Profanity was often used in things and jokes that shouldn't be said. We only had one female member, and that was Kathy Bullowa. And if Kathy wasn't there, then different things would be said. And Kathy really wasn't there. And then one of Saul Kaplan, who was the unofficial running of the PNG, he never was the president, would come and say, like, this was one of his, he said, "I don't care whether you're from Jockstrap, Missouri." That was one of his favorite, I hear that all the time. I don't know if anybody remembers that. But all these comments about these, that just meant like you're from Hicksville or something, or you're from, you're from Peoria or somewhere. Anyway, we had a very good time with PNG. And then it was Abe Kossoff's idea that PNG should be a truly democratic organization where anyone qualified could join. And Saul Kaplan said, he resigned. He said, "I'm out of here." He said, there are enough other organizations that you can belong to without, by public acclamation. These are people that we like and everything, and we're a club, and we don't need this. And Saul resigned, and he was not part of it after then. Abe was a unique person, actually, as those of you who knew him. He was a ladies' man, not in the sense of looking for a topless club, which they didn't have. He was very, very faithful to his wife and everything. But I mean, he would go to a banquet and dance with the wife of a prominent collector and that sort of thing. Had immaculately polished shoes, fingernails, and wouldn't think of wearing. I don't think he owned a T-shirt. A gentleman. If he couldn't say something nice, he wouldn't say it. And if there was a big feud, the ANA and the PNG often feuded. They feuded with each other continually. They had fights. When I was president of the PNG in 1979 to 1977 to 1989, the ANA refused to let the PNG members have borscht tables, or there was something about it. So we led a march. I led a march of all the PNG members to the ANA board meeting. I remember that. And it was something that they didn't, the PNG in the early days, 1960, 61, would go to the ANA, and the ANA would block a hotel. The shows are much smaller than them. And the hotel would say, "Okay, this is the headquarters hotel. It's the XYZ Hilton. You want to put your show here, and you want the grand ballroom, but it's going to cost you, what, $25,000 or whatever they charged then. It was a fair amount of money, $10,000. How many rooms can you put in our hotel? And if you want to make this a headquarters thing and you want to have some rooms for meeting, you rent the ballroom, you have to do this." And the bourse was very uncertain. They didn't know how many dealers would sign up. So Saul Kaplan, representing the PNG, said, "We'll do what they call block booking. We will guarantee the ANA that the PNG will take 75 tables. So you're home free, as you can go to the hotel and say, look, we haven't even started selling tables. We have 75 tables sold." Okay, so the PNG wanted something in return. What they wanted in return was some status, like when PNG members come, they can put a PNG sign up, or they can have first choice of the spots. Well, John Pittman, who is a member of the ANA Board of Governors for years and years and years and years, said, "Well, this isn't fair. The PNG has no status whatsoever." And I was a good friend of John's. So Abe Kossoff would step in and say, "Well, let's have peace here. Actually, the ANA and the PNG are both trying to promote coin collecting, and it would be all smoothed over, and we'd have our bourse." And then the same thing would happen next year. This went on for years. Many, many years, at least the best part of 20 years, where the ANA, PNG Day, which we have now, is okay. That was controversial probably to 15 or 20 years ago. Like you're stealing from the ANA and so forth. And the PNG said, "Well, we're all in the same thing." And I could tell many other PNG stories, but I should tell one PNG story, but I won't name names. Okay, there's a particular PNG Day that, let's see, we have ladies present, one over there. Two of them. Okay. You have to plug your ears. Now, this isn't too bad. Okay, so a particular PNG member happened to like ladies of the evening, and there was a particular lady of the evening who, this particular PNG president, who actually spent a night in jail during an ANA convention. Some of you may know who it is. But found out that this lady would actually come around to the PNG thing and take appointments. So she would come up and say, you're so-and-so, I'm available at 2:15. I'm not kidding. So this caused, when I guess Abe Kossoff found out about it, it had already happened, okay? So this caused a big internal, this was the private club era, a big internal thing like, we shouldn't do this. This is not what we're doing, And other people found Abe Kossoff, and so that's probably the most risque thing that I know that PNG ever did. But PNG always tried, and this is a PNG event right here. PNG always tried to do the right thing, and they probably did things that were politically incorrect, but not with malice and a forethought. And of course, the membership was as as diverse as it is today. Everybody wanted something different, and so you had many different things to contend with. But by and large, the PNG, started in 1955 when I went to my first convention, and went on today where the PNG is actually recognized and very desirable because, like in the 1933 Double Eagle, which is a story in itself. The PNG filed a amicus curiae or a brief or something saying, here's the position on it, or they'll go to Congress and say, so the PNG is absolutely wonderful, has been for a long time, but it's probably like the US Congress or something, you could view it from many different angles, but it's been a very good organization. Now, what to say else? You could, it's sort of like saying, Dave, do you want to talk about the history of the world, and you have 1 hour? I have a whole bunch of notes here. Maybe I'll take some questions a little bit later, but people say, what dealers did you know? And I knew like B. Max Mell, and I'm very lucky to have met him because I think I met him in 1955 and then again in 1956. But here again, Abe Kossoff, we were at a convention, probably an ANA convention, and he said, can you join me tonight with my wife Molly and B. Max Mell for dinner? And I said, okay. So I did this, and so we're sitting around, and Max Mell, a very nice guy. He was very short in stature, maybe this high, and when you shook his hand was he did not have a firm grasp. It was almost like he had fingers filled with water or something. They were a very soft hand. I just remember this. Okay, as nice as can be. Max Mell could not say anything mean about anyone. One of my favorite Max Mell stories was a guy named Oscar Schilke, whose collection we handled. And Max Mell was known for grading things way off of the mark. It could be polished and he'd call it proof or something. And no, this is true. And you know that if you get anything in old Max Mell envelopes. Since the collection happened to be nice to begin with, then you get nice coins. But Oscar Schilke bought an early gold coin, like at $17.99 from out of one of the sales. And wrote to B. Max Mell and said, this coin is not uncirculated, it's been polished. And I'm going to bring it to the ANA. So Oscar Schilke brings it, and this is Oscar Schilke talking. Max Mell says, Oscar, how are you doing? And how's your wife? Let's go to dinner tonight and everything else. And anyway, and Oscar said, well, I really couldn't bring up the matter of that coin. But anyway, I was sitting with Max Mell, and I had talked to Max Mell on the phone. He used to put out a little price list, and I'd call him like 1954 or 1955, and I got his price list, and at 19.9s Indian cents, uncirculated, were $10 a piece, and that's a scarce Indian cent. And so I called up the Numismatic Company of Texas, or whatever name he was, and a lady answered and said, "Who's this?" I said, "David Bowers calling from 44th, Pennsylvania." Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania is my office, and can I talk to someone about ordering coins? And I said, is Mr. Mell available? No one knew how to pronounce M-E-H-L, by the way, and he settled the matter by saying, are you on my mailing list, M-E-H-L-I-N-G? But even today, people say Max Mell, and everyone said Max Mell, like you shouldn't say mail, but he pronounced it mail. But anyway, he comes on the phone, and believe it or not, I expected that it's like calling the Pope and getting him, I said, well, this is Dave Bowers. He said, I know you. I read your ads in the Numismatics Scrapbook magazine. You remind me of myself when I was a little kid. And they said, now what's this you want? And I said, 1909 S Indian cent uncirculated, sir, Mr. Mail, whatever I call them, $10 each. And he said, yeah, we do have those. How many do you want? And I said, well, whatever I said, well, do you have 5? Sure, okay. Well, you can have them, okay. And then Max Mel said, okay, well, now I just want to let you know that these coins are now selling for $30 each, and I haven't put out a price list for a while. But you can have them, which I had them. So these are, but he just wanted to let me know that I wasn't fooling him or something. So that's the B. Max Mel story. Then he died in 1957. Mrs. Norweb, she was not a dealer, but some other, when you're a little kid, and if you try to be sincere, maybe John Krelovich is a good example now among kids. He's not a kid anymore, but when you're a little kid and you try to do your best and you know about coins, people do like you. Louis Elasberg Sr. liked me too. But Mrs. Norweb took a liking to me for some reason, and was a good friend of mine, and I visited her at Booth Bay Harbor, Maine when I was, here again, I wasn't even 20 years old. And she would tell me these different stories, but she was regarded as royalty. If Mrs. Norweb came to the ANA convention, she would come in and she would be dressed in maybe have a long fur coat if it was not in California. And she would come along and she would look at the board table, and all the dealers would say, hey, that's Mrs. Norweb, I hope she comes here. And she would come in, and if she wanted something, she would buy it. And I remember hearing her say one day, somebody offered her a coin and said, well, this Mrs. Norweb would be $200 or whatever it was. And she said, well, no, I don't, I had nothing I want. And he said, well, maybe I'll make it 180. And he said, sir, if I wanted, I'd pay $200. She was very formal, but it's sort of fun. But she was nice. All these people are very nice to know, and one of the nice. I could give a special program on J. Ford Jr. By the way, I see his name here. But there's an awful lot of tradition. When I started in 1954, as I mentioned, or 53. But in the 1950s, we didn't have any grading guide at all. It wasn't until 1958 that Brown and Dunn came out with sketches. So no one agreed, no two people would agree what AU or EF was. We had no pricing guides of any kind except the annual guidebook. And when the guidebook came out, all the dealers would reprice their inventory upward. There was no such thing as anything going down. So we'd take 1804 half cent with cross-up floor 4 stems or something. And if it was VF, $8 and went up to $9, and in our inventory we put $8.75 or something, because it was the only guide to go by. And then occasionally someone like Art Kagan and Paul in particular, they get very splashy and they say, we will pay 20% over guidebook for any proof liberty seated coin. By the way, there was nothing like proof 61 or 2. It was either proof or it wasn't. And if you wanted to look at a coin, you could pick out a nice proof. There was a guy named Arthur Kahn, C-O-N-M, who was PNG president one time. He had an office in the house in Melrose, Mass. And I always liked nice things, what they call cherry picking, and I would do this. And he was a dealer in commems. And I remember knowing very early on that if you were dealing commems, there are certain commemoratives that you just can't find nice easily. And one was even the Columbian $half, but the Lafayette dollars, were always hard to find. So I went to see him, and I said, I want to buy for inventory, and he brings out his boxes, and here are my Lafayette dollars. I have 35 of them, and uncirculateds are, and I don't remember what the price was, so I'm making this up. Uncirculateds are $35, okay, they're no matter what. So I go through and I pick out, 10 gems, but he also had some that were AU, but they were all the same price. And this is true of all the dealers. And someone like John J. Pittman has gained the reputation that he would cherry pick things and get nice things, but most people did not. That's why when the Sheldon system of values was started with VF30 and MS60, it was a formula, and the idea is that an MS60 coin, like a cent, was worth twice as much as a VF30. Well, today you'd say that's absurd. a VF30 a large cent is worth $100, and the MS60 is worth 4,000. But as strange as it might sound, if you were collecting Liberty nickels or Morgan dollars or whatever, you did not look for quality. Most people did not look for quality. 1 person in 30 looked for quality. They just said, now I have a proof. And that my proof thing is now filled. Probably, I don't know if any of you ever collect picture postcards. It's another one of my hobbies. But today, if you do, you go to a postcard show and you want a picture of the First National Bank of El Reno, Oklahoma. You know, you don't say, well, is this card mint? Is it EF? Is it VF? You say, okay, I buy this card. I have this card for $5. And that's okay. Condition isn't important. Well, there may be some time when they encapsulate postcards than it is, but coin grading just isn't as important as it was now. Anyway, time is running on, so I will take a few questions. But today we did not have certified coins. Never even heard of such a thing. And one of my favorite, well, there's a few things that are a little different now in 2009. We have the internet. We have cell phones. We have long distance. In 1953, when I was a dealer, if I wanted to call Abe Kossoff, I'd have to call the operator and I'd say, I want so-and-so in Beverly Hills, California. And they said, well, we'll try to put you through, maybe routing it through Chicago or something, or else all the circuits are busy. We'll call you back in a half hour. And they would do this. I mean, this is the way it was. Mail was everything. Mail order, I mean, you know, there was no telexes. Mail order was the only way you did things. You send checks, you look at your Monday morning mail, and that would be at they did not have toll-free telephone lines. The Watt service came later. And so it was a much quieter world. Things went much more slowly than they did now. We still had, counterfeiting was a much bigger problem than it is now. That's an advance. Now, whether encapsulation is good or bad is a matter of debate. You know, Hugh Shull, you might know him, he's not at the convention dealer, said now any monkey can sell coins. I mean, it used to be that, you know, had to know what a coin was, but somebody can have a PCGS 1916 D dime and MS63 and say, this is a rare dime, I want $15,000 for it. And someone will say, what about the grade? Well, look at it, it's a 63. Well, what about the price? Well, look at it. You know, you don't have to know anything. I'm seriously, you can, and people do this. You can hire somebody off the street and say, here's a coin and a bunch of telephone numbers, and you're a professional numismatist. Now we have prices. I mentioned in my talk the other day that it used to be if you wanted to find a price of an 1882 cc Morgan dollar, you looked in the guidebook and it would say it's worth $3, whatever it was worth. And the other day I was writing an article for the numismatist, so I looked on Google for 1882 cc, and there were like over 10,000 hits. Okay, and so then I decided, I had heard that there's a new something called Bing, B-I-N-G, being run by Microsoft. So they have like 11 million hits on it. But I mean, here, if you want to find out about 1882 cc and 209, you say, well, we're really advanced. You have 1 million places to look, or you have 10,000, but that really isn't advanced because you could spend all week, and all you really want to know is how many were minted and like what they're worth. So whether this is good or bad or not. Now we have something like electronic books. I like to think the guidebook is, you know, warm and cuddly and will be around forever. I don't know. Anyway, as I conclude, I do think one thing that's become more important now in 2009 than in the past, and I get a huge amount of thanks for this. Somebody will write me an email and I'll answer. I never dreamed you would actually answer. Personal attention is like obsolete. If you call, you call up, well, maybe Southwest would be okay, but if you call up any airline of your choice, or you call up the phone company or call up Visa or whatever, and you want a personal conversation, you might as well just give up. So if you're a coin dealer or a coin collector and you show any personal interest, a little sign of life like you're a human being, and it's nice to speak to you, you get much more feedback now than you got back in 1953. Anyway, that's those are my comments. Thank you. Now I do have 3 more hours worth. I didn't even. Does anyone have any questions or anything that I can answer? Any ideas or thoughts? Yes.
Is there anything you would have done different with your career in coins, and et cetera? Anything you regret?
Well, I've always had a good time. What would I have done differently? I probably would have had a few different business relationships. Maybe not get involved with PCGS, but I like David Hall, and you work with PCGS now, don't you?
Yeah.
But I mean, and Ron could say the same thing for some of his relationships. Every coin dealer that's been through things would say, well, I would probably do some things a little differently from hindsight, but then everything is as long as you don't shoot the moon whenever you do anything, like I bought my share of fake coins, but that's okay. I mean, if I do it over again, maybe I'd know more about not buying a fake coin. One time PCGS, everybody thought was going to be the hottest ticket available, and the stock came out and actually dropped in value to a tiny fraction, which in retrospect, gosh, I shouldn't have ever gotten any. But if you had asked me 2 years ago, if you asked me a year ago, like up in New Hampshire, Bernie Madoff is your neighbor. He isn't, but he's your neighbor. And gosh, hi Bernie, how you doing? And well, I'm invested. Yeah, I don't have a heck of a lot of money to invest, but here's a check for $100,000. See what you can do for me. Everybody would do that, Or if somebody said, I want to put together an investment portfolio for you, what banks would you pick? I said, well, banks are pretty good. How about Bank of America? How about Wachovia? And I've been completely wrong. Fortunately, I've never been a gambler. I've never bought a future of anything in my life. And when I do, and I've never worked on borrowed money. I've never been leveraged. I've had bank lines of credit, but I've never. I mean, when I was a little kid, if I had a $6,000 inventory, I had a $6,000 inventory. I didn't go to the bank, and I didn't. If the market set back, the market has crashed in 1965, which I was part of. The market crashed in 1980. Those of you who are veterans of 1980, I'm sure Ron Gillio is. There's a little subculture about the 1980 crash. Like if you read, the market crashed on March so-and-so at 10:30 in the morning. Have you ever heard of this story? It was at Lincoln, Nebraska, and all of a sudden nobody wanted to buy any coin. Can you imagine? I mean, can you imagine no one wanted to buy anything? Like I'm not buying proof gold, I'm not buying anything. This happened actually. Then it crashed again in 1991, and I think it's crashing right now. But I never lost any money on any of the previous crashes. I mean, I might not have made money. I might have made a little money, but I never lost any money. My companies are all profitable because I saw all this coming. I've written books on coin cycles, and I saw this coming. But as far as doing things over again, I think I was married twice. I suppose I could say I shouldn't have been married to my first wife, but then I had 2 very nice kids, so if I had to do it over again, I would. So there probably is very little I would do differently, because if it didn't work out, I learned something. And I also try not to carry a grudge or to. I mean, if I make a mistake or buy a fake coin, that's part of my experience. I'm not going to go around and say I'm unhappy because I bought a fake coin. I'm the one who bought it. So anyway, that's the answer to that question. Any others? Yes.
Yes, my name is Dave Sperry. I'm what you would call a casual collector, and casual means cheap. I don't spend a lot each year, but I've done it for a long time. And you and I are the same age. We're born in 38, and we started about the same time. Whereas you've gone on to do all kinds of fantastic things. I've been a casual collector all these years. and in my mid-teens, I bought the new numismatics scrapbook, and there's an ad in here by Q. David Bowers. I'd just like to read a little bit. It says,
This is unscripted.
My prices for choice coins are tops. Let's hear from you and see what you have to offer. I will travel anywhere if warranted. And then you have some lists of some coins for sale.
What year is this?
55.
Okay.
You have a 16D dime for $11. The Colombian halves that you spoke about, 15 of those for $11 dollars. 15 Colombian. So
Yeah.
I just thought I would
Well,
add
thank
that,
you.
say that I followed your career and I've read about you in numismatist and coin world for all these years. And
Thank you.
it's
Well,
a
the funny
pleasure
thing
to
is,
meet you.
the funny thing is, people, if I say, look, I sold an 1895 proof dollar for $200, right now it's 60,000. They say, well, how could you do that? But at that time, that's all it was worth, you know. And nobody said, I'm buying a bargain. I mean, maybe nobody, if I advertised, maybe no one ordered it. Although we did have a policy at one time, it's a company policy in the 1980s, never to advertise uncirculated 1999 SVDB cents. Because if we did put them in an ad or something, people would always order those, and you never could keep them in stock. It's the hottest ticket there was. And so we just didn't advertise them because we wanted people to buy other things. That was always just so popular. It was a one coin. If somebody said, what is the iconic American numismatic coin, I'd have to say the 1999 SVDB cent, because it's the one coin that everybody dreamed of owning, you know. No one ever dreamed of owning an $1804. You read about those, but everybody wanted a 1999 SVDB cent. Anyone else? Yes.
I think one of the really neat things about you and what you've done through your life is the amount of very interesting and fascinating people that you've been able to come in contact with, the Abe Kossoffs and John G. Fords and so forth. The two people that tend to stand out for me is Ambassador and Mrs. Norweb, and you did talk about them and you've actually handled their sale. I wonder if you would be able to expound a little bit about them as people and what kind of people they were like, and since you knew them so well, and maybe you could give us some insight about what kind of people they were like.
Okay, catch me on the time. So, okay, Mrs. Norweb actually was the daughter of Albert Fairchild Holden, who was an extremely wealthy entrepreneur. He owned the Cleveland Plain Dealer, had mines in the American West, and all sorts of good things. And he died when she was Mr. Holden was collecting coins, the avid coin collector. Emery May Holden, a young, attractive young lady, would help him look coin like pine tree shillings up in the Crosby book and put down what variety was. Her father died when she was, I forgot how old, 12 years old or something. So she had this memory of her late father in the coin collection helping him with this. So she became a coin collector, and she married a fellow named Henry Norweb, and although someone later said Emery May Holden Norweb defined, she is Cleveland society, the patron of the Cleveland Art Museum and everything. But she actually ran off from her family with Henry Norweb, who came from an industrial family in England. You know, like eloped and ran off together, and then she served in the ambulance corps in World War I over in France, and she was, and then there was some story she said where she was in China and they were raiding the palace or something, and people were coming out. This must have been the 20s. And that people were coming out with stuff they looted, and she was there buying stuff. She was a real person, but because they were, well, and our Henry was in the ambassadorial service in different places, and he was not a coin collector at all. She was, and she was a very nice, she knew her things, knew her coins very well, she knew what she wanted, and she had a grading system. It was either circulated, uncirculated, or proof, and the coins were different envelopes colored. I forgot, like blue, yellow, or something, and but no other grades. And she sometimes wouldn't buy a coin unless she could find an uncirculated one. You know, and of course, no one back then knew whether a 1805 half dime existed in uncirculated grade or not. So maybe after looking for one for 35 years, she would finally find the VF, which for that coin is very nice for 1802. Mrs. Norweb died. Then she was sort of the grand dame of numismatics, and people would, I would say, kowtow to her. Now, I never did this, not because I was impolite, but I just looked at it as a regular person. And she did me too, you know. But people, you know, there was something like, gosh, you have to act differently when you're around her. And she recognized this, of course. John Ford was her exclusive dealer, or not exclusive, sold her things one day until one time, and I'm making this up a little bit, because I don't know the numbers, but John said, look, I paid $5,000 for this coin, and I want $5,500 for it. Mrs. Norweb bought it, okay? And then later somebody said to Mrs. Norweb, you know, I had a coin you might have wanted the other day. It was an XYZ clone, and I sold it to Ford for, and Mrs. Norweb would never have, for Ford for $2,000 or something. So anyway, Mrs. Norweb, John Ford calls up Mrs. Norweb, or she visits. They own the top floor of something called the River House in New York, where it was all beautifully done in oak and the old style. And Henry Luce, who had Time magazine, also lived there. They had their own, but Norweb's had their own elevator and everything. But she went to Ford and said, you know, about that coin you paid $5,000 for the other day, you know, I hear that, I understand you didn't pay $5,000. Oh, well, I did. Well, no, actually, you bought it from so-and-so for $2,000. And she said, well, I guess, you know, there was a trade involved, or you owed me something, or whatever. And Miss Norweb said, you know, I want to tell you something, John. You could have told me you paid $2,000 for it and won $5,500, and I would have bought it. But I don't like to be told the wrong thing. And they never did the business after that. Yeah. But anyway, Mrs. Norweb died, and everything went to R. Henry Norweb Jr., who is called Harry, and his wife Libby. And they inherited this, and Harry he actually was involved with the American Numismatic Society, and he collected some things. And then they wanted to sell the collection, and everybody and his brother was after the Norweb. So when they wanted to sell it, they called me and just said, come and get it. They didn't call anyone else at all. But Leithberg did that too, and so did Harry Bass and a few others. But one of Mrs. Norweb's favorite stories, this is Libby, the second generation. When the Norweb collection was in play, they came to some A&A convention, and some dealer came up, and the Norwebs are telling me this. They came up and said to Mr. Norweb, who didn't collect coins, and Libby ran the family. She did the money and everything else. Went up to Mr. Norweb and said, you know, if Mrs. Norweb goes out shopping sometime or something, you know, I'd like to talk to you about the coin collection. And and so Mrs. Norweb did go out shopping, and then they got this dealer, and it was probably somebody important, come and said, okay, now, you know, if you have some time, I'd like to talk to you about your mother's collection. And they said, well, you know, actually, my wife is the one who handles that. Anyway, they had great fun doing all this. They were very fine human beings, and after we handled part of their collection, they had a place over in Boothbay Harbor, Maine, and they invited our whole staff over for the day. There were about 50, 60 people, and we had lobster dinner out in the lawn along the ocean. They hired a boat and took us for boat rides, and I was telling. I stood up and I said, I want to thank you for this. And Harry Norweb says, but before he does this, I want to stand up. He said, you know, I grew up in the ambassadorial service. My family was, and so forth. And one thing you never do is you don't say thank you for thank you, because it will never end. And then I said, well, I want to say one thing. And I said, you know, we're an auction company. We handle coins and collection. It should be the auction company that puts on this lobster fest, not you. Anyway, it was fun. I think we probably ran out. Yeah, one more question.
Of all the books you've written, which is your favorite?
I probably like the Expert's Guide that I did recently, 3 or 4 years ago, because it's just a lot of different stuff. The most unsuccessful book I ever wrote was the Waterford Water Cure, which we printed a couple thousand copies of, and I've probably, half of them never sold. It was the one book that John Ford said was his favorite. But I like the Expert's Guide. But I happen to like all the books. I did one called the SS New York about, a year or two ago about. It's a little book. It's only 98 pages. And everybody loves that book. I mean, maybe it's because it's easy to read or has lots of pictures, but people will say, "Gosh, I want to get 2 copies and give them as gifts." And it's. I love writing, and but I like writing things that are where you have to find something new. If you said, write a history of George Washington or something, I would not be able to contribute anything and wouldn't do it. But if you said, well, they did it, how can you write a history of the ANA? Well, certainly I can do that, and we did that. So anyway.
Could I just ask, if I was thinking about starting out as like a vest pocket dealer, because I'm filling an album of Liberty Head vehicles, and it's nice to see the 1913s downstairs. What recommendations would you have for somebody new starting out, as a vest pocket dealer, or just setting up at some borscht table somewhere? Is it tougher to be a coin dealer now? Is it tougher to start, or?
Well, probably easier because you can buy coins all over the place and show interest. If someone says, and also if someone says, tell me why this 1884 dollar, that's a common broad date, is worth something. Remember that one time you didn't know it was worth much, and I didn't either. So everybody, you should never look down at anyone. Just remember that we all started. But I think I think the best asset you'd have would be just be a nice person, answer questions, and then if somebody forms a set of Morgan dollars, they say, when you say after you get home, keep in touch, and although price is important, and there will be somebody, if you say I want $50 for this, they'll say, well, I can buy one for $47, and they'll buy one for $47. But most people, you could say, I want $50 for it, and they'll say, oh, thank you, and they'll buy it from you. Personal. Like Littleton Coin Company, David Sun would say here, if you want to buy a, I don't know, XYZ Jefferson nickel, you could you could say, well, Littleton, I want $2, but you get a nice coin. They say, well, gosh, it's only worth $1.50. Well, that's fine. Go spend the afternoon in a coin shop and find one. But whenever I want something, I always call them up and say, Phil, bring me up to date in Jefferson nickels. And Dave's a good friend of mine. And he said, we were talking about customers. They say the number of complaints we get per year is about this big, and I would say, just be real and show interest, and that's the best thing you can do. Anyway, one more thing. Okay.
My wife and I just started collecting about 3 years ago, and I absolutely love the hobby. And my question, I don't think I could ever sell the coins that I've bought. I just enjoy them so much, and even if someone offered me twice as much as I paid for them, I would never want to get rid of them. So my question for you is, through the years, what maybe 3 coins do you wish that you would have never sold?
Well, I have to sell them as a matter of necessity too. I mean, I could say, why did I sell an 1894 S dime I paid $4,700 for if it's worth $1.4 million? But on the other hand, I've lived since then. I've raised a family, and it's part of. I have my favorite coin. I tend to like coins and things with stories. I mean, I like a pine tree shilling. That's a wonderful item. I bought a 1909 SVDB cent in one of our own auctions about 2 years ago, just to have one. I mean, I've sold zillions of them, but I think, gosh, maybe I should just have one to look at in the safe deposit box. I tend to like coins with stories. I'd rather buy an 1883, I buy 1892 Columbian $half, and then I think of the Columbian Exposition, because I have books in the Columbian Exposition. If you said, do you want to buy the finest known, the only PCGS MS67 1952 S quarter for $10,000, I wouldn't be the slightest bit interested, because the regular one's only worth $10, So it has to have a story. Okay, well, I think we'll say goodbye, but thank you.
Thank you.